Hello, class. This week we're going to be going over Module 7, which is the American Revolution. My name is Andrew Delanila.
My name is Parv Jain.
And my name is Erin Riley.
So, last week we went over the American Revolution Part 1, which was from 1765 to 1789. The main objective this week are first, we're going to be learning about the American Revolution from the perspective of John Adams. And so, as we worked on last week on the worksheet through the conversation between John Adams and Jane Addams. And then also, we learned about the different phases of the American Revolution. And then we also saw why the product of the American Revolution happened with the different supporters and opponents of it. So, going on the supporters, like the elite class, the elite mercantile class, and just the rich people in general supporting Hamilton and other people of the Federalist Party. And then the opponents of it, which was people like from Whiskey's Rebellion and then Chase Rebellion.
This week we are going to talk about American Revolution Part 2 from 1787 to 1800. Main objectives of this week are: the first one is learn how the fiscal policy developed with the federal government. The second one is see the fiscal policy through Hamilton's view. The third one is how the equality of power changed the government in the second half of the revolution.
So basically, we're going to go over the fiscal policy, which was the new financial plan, and then seeing the fiscal policy through Hamilton's view, which he created a financial plan which went through the first public credit, the second public credit, and the new idea of putting a new central government and a new central bank, and also how the equality of power changed. So when Hamilton was going through his financial plan, the Federalist Party kind of moved into the government and gains more of the economic power, and that just most of the federal party took over the government.
In this slide, we'll discuss the main points. The first main point was making the United States an industry/business-based country. The second point was to restore/solve the U.S. credit and solve all of its debt. The third point was to the switch of the majority of economic power to federal government. And the fourth was to please the rich and to have the majority of the rich families on Hamilton's side.
So going over the pictures in this slide, if you didn't know who was on the $10 bill already, it's Alexander Hamilton. And then also there's a picture of credit restoration, which Hamilton is ultimately trying to solve. And then the third picture of the political cartoon is feeding money to Uncle Sam, which is just the central government to protect rich people's money and the elite people's money, and kind of having the lower classes not have a equal say in what the sorry equal say in what the government had to do with their money. And then also the last picture, if you haven't watched Hamilton yet, the three Schuyler sisters, which are Elizabeth, Peggy, and Angelica, and they were one of the richest families during the American Revolution. So for my part of the presentation, I talked about making the United States an industry/business-based country. So going over what I'm going to say, I'm basically going to go over the legitimacy of the government by setting financial standards with a plan. And Hamilton's plan had three major parts. So I'm going to be going over the first report on public credit, the second report on the second report on public report, and then the report on manufacturers. And I'm just going to be going over those three in detail. So the first report on public credit, Hamilton stated that the debt was accumulated during the war, and that none of the war debts have been paid off. None of the war bonds have been paid off. So he was trying to accumulate a plan that solved all these debts. And also, he wanted to reorganize the national debt in a more manageable way to deconstruct and establish public credit. So basically, what he did was he collected taxes from most of the businesses and pay them to the government to solve the national debt. And so we could have more of a better public credit. And after so many run throughs through the government and after so many proposals, only the first report on public credit was compromised in 1790. So the second report on public credit, which was also called the report on a national bank, it was for the proposal of a central/national bank. Also, Hamilton wanted to issue federal banknotes, and also having a bank would make the flow of money more organized and especially more official. So basically, Hamilton just wanted a place where money filtered through, especially when collecting the taxes through small businesses and other parties. And so just making that place of central money flow was really important. Also, the issuing of federal banknotes that would make it more official to go back and forth through businesses and the other parties when collecting money. And as I've said before, just having one place where money flowed in and out from was really the the best way for the report of a national bank. So, going on my third part of my presentation, which was the report on manufacturers. So, this was a really big part of his plan, which was collecting tariffs and taxes on national trade. So, he put tax on traded goods, so going in and out of the the United States, so mostly between Britain and mostly between Europe. So he put the tax on traded goods so we can expedite more profits going towards the national debt. And then also this third step is just really more of a tool than a main step to make the government and central bank flourish. So after his financial plan would be over, this step would be really just be there to keep on it going and keep on going really strong. And then also the best part of these tariffs was that um, it was not going to affect the change of supplies or the price of goods going up, which is also good for just the people in general. Because when they order their supplies, none of the prices go up. And then when they have to sell them, they don't have to lower or they don't have to put up their prices um, at a different price.
The main challenges that Hamilton faced were, the first one was he had to pay the debt of $54 million. That was the biggest challenge. The second was he wanted to put the country on a solid financial status. The third one was the war bonds had zero value, so he wanted to give it some value. The fourth one was US lost its credit value and no one wanted to invest in it anymore. He wanted to restore that value. For the second part, he made a three part plan to tackle the situation. The first one was US government would assume to pay all federal and state debts. The second one was they will open a bank which would issue stocks for the same value of war bonds to give the war bonds the same value they had before. The third one was they plan on increasing the taxes on imported goods which would return more revenue for the government. So for my third slide, I'll talk about the consequences of his plan. First one is the bond that had zero value before now had the same value that it had before the war. For the second one, increase in the number of investors because of the 4% interest. And for the third one, as the number of investors increased, the capital of government increased. And for the fourth one, they can use that capital to invest in traditional ventures, manufacture products in the US, as well as infrastructure improvements.
So, in the next three slides, I'll be discussing how the federal government gained more economic power. In this slide, part one, we'll discuss the economic issues with the Articles of Confederation. So, with the Articles of Confederation, the federal government had little to no power to raise revenues, and they had problems paying off their foreign debt. The primary source of tax revenues from state government to fund federal governments were never given. This is partly because the articles did not include any enforcement mechanism to ensure that the state governments would send in the full amount. Each state had a single vote in federal Congress. The consent of the 13 states required for a Congress to enact any federal taxes. A single state could block federal tax legislation. The de facto veto power from each state created substantial decision-making costs for Congress and prevented import duties from being enacted with the Articles of Confederation. The federal government also lacked the power to enforce commercial or trade regulations. Therefore, there was uncertain authority to deal with foreign powers. There was also uncertainty about the financial viability of the federal government. So, in this slide, part 2, we'll talk about the adoption of the Constitution. In 1787, 55 men attended the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia that drafted the Constitution of the United States. In 1788, on June 21st, New Hampshire became the ninth state that ratified the Constitution. Only 9 states were needed in order for the Constitution to be ratified. Congress declared the Constitution to be enforced on March 4th, 1789. Under the Articles, which was only in effect since 1781, the political system had a very weak central government. Adopting the Constitution strengthened this. The Constitution then replaced the Articles of Confederation. In this slide, part 3, power gained over economy. The power to tax and the authority to settle past federal debts was one power that the federal government gained. This improved the government's financial future and the markets for funds. The second power gained by the federal government was only required a simple majority vote of the representatives in both chambers of the National Congress to enact tax legislation. There were and still are checks on majority voting. The third is that the president can veto congressional legislation and a 2/3 vote can override the president's veto. Neither created a magnitude of decision-making costs that the Articles did. And the fourth is they have the power to make treaties with foreign nations. So in the last slide, part 4, we'll be discussing more power gained over the economy by the federal government. So before the Constitution, there was a fundamental democratic principle that required the majority rule to be respected. The Constitution had provisions to limit majority rule, including the Electoral College. The second point is each branch of government had the power to limit the power of other branches. And the third is a unitary system. They had a unitary system and all power invested into the central government.
So, to go over our last main point, we go over how Hamilton has to please the rich and also how he has to have the majority of the rich parties on his side. So, basically, he has to please the rich because of the funds that he needed to keep his new financial plan afloat. So, as the quote goes, money is the bottom line. He really just needs all the money he can to support his new central bank, to support his new tax laws, and the 3 parties that he has to go through are first the rich mercantile class, which is just the main government. Just getting money, getting national loans, and getting federal bank loans, and then also the Federalist Party, which is mainly people that are in the government already, the people that he has ties with, so that they will donate money to his new financial plan. And then, of course, the elite party, which is more of the social party that goes over the people, like I've said before, which are the Schuyler sisters and their father, the Schuyler sisters, Elizabeth, Angelica, and Peggy, and of course, how Hamilton marries Elizabeth and how that social interaction gave him more money for his cause.
To please the rich and to have the majority of the rich families on Hamilton's side. The rich mercantile groups. National Bank would give them some money to start off with. Having such a big financial tool would bring reassurance to Hamilton and his plan, would make himself more legitimate for others to take him seriously.
So basically, the rich mercantile groups was basically more of the central government. He really just needed the national bank to give him money to start off, because without this, his financial plan would not stay afloat. And then having the rich mercantile groups, such as the government and the national bank, it would give him so much reassurance to know that there's backup money to support his plan and to make him seem legitimate. And then also, it would make him, as I said, more legitimate for others to take him seriously as we talk about the next groups that would give him more money. So it would just give him more of a social status and more of a reputation so that people have heard of Hamilton. And so that would give him more money, more time, and better profits to the national bank and the national debt.
The Federalist Party would give the people that favored him more government and economic power. The benefit of having people from inside the government, Hamilton has an advantage when taking proposals through Congress.
So basically, the Federalist Party is just a really big part in getting money and pleasing the rich, because when taking his proposals through Congress, it gives him more of an advantage because he has more of a social interaction with the government officials, such as people like Aaron Burr and how he has met him through the American Revolution. And also, the Federalist Party just is just full of government officials, and they're really wealthy. So they would give him more money to finance his financial plan, and so again, giving him more of a good reputation, not just through the national bank, but through the Federalist Party, which is more of a people's social interaction, which just makes him more of a strong suit.
So, for part 4, we'll discuss the elite class. Hamilton wanted to get on a level where socializing will get the word on his new financial plan out there. He had to make bonds with people to get on the good side of people so his reputation would be good. Hamilton wanted to please the elite class so that he would have another source of income for his new financial plan.
So basically, this was Hamilton's key point into getting money for his new financial plan. So the elite class was, as I've mentioned before, the Schuyler sisters and more of their friends and more of that social party. And just like in today's world where socializing is really one of the best tools in getting whatever your business out, your word out, or whatever you have to say out of there. So when you meet new people, as Alexander Hamilton was, he was just trying to have good relationships, not even talking about a financial plan in any words. He was just trying to get good relationships with these people. So in the end, when he actually asked them for money and proposed his new financial plan, he would get good amounts of money since these were the elite and the rich people. And so also this would create a third and really key point of another source of income for his new financial plan. Thank you for watching our presentation. Again, we're Module 7, the second part of the American Revolution. I'm Andrew Delanila.
I'm Erin.
I'm Parv, Group 7 signing off.
Oh, and also don't forget your questions. Make sure they're good, and we are looking forward to them.